Over the past 2.6 million years, glacial ice has advanced and retreated across much of our planet. Yet one peculiar region in southwest Wisconsin known as the Driftless area stands apart. Its slightly higher elevation caused massive ice sheets to divert around it during glacial advances. This left behind an eroded plateau with steep hills, forested ridges, and deeply carved river valleys. Because of its rugged topography, this area is unsuitable for widespread development. As a result, it harbors a wealth of undisturbed natural habitats. In this video, I've come to Iowa County to identify trees and shrubs that stand out at the beginning of winter. Winter is a great season to discover plants that reveal certain traits at this time of year and then fade into the background at other times. On my hike, I made a couple of surprising and exciting discoveries. Along the way, I'll share some handy tips to help you identify species. One way a tree or shrub stands out is by fruits that persist into winter. This first plant's wrinkled fruits might not look appetizing, but I assure you they are edible and delicious. Their sweet flavor is unlike anything else I've tried, making this find all the more rewarding. This is Viburnum lentago. Opposite branching and fleshy dark fruits persisting into winter were pretty much the only traits I needed to identify it as a viburnum. What sets lentago apart from other viburnum species are its long, pointed buds. One field guide describes these as dragon's beaks. While exaggerated, this description is easier to remember than a dry botanical term. This plant usually grows as a multi-stem shrub and can reach heights of up to 20 feet. Its fruits have disc-shaped pits, so you'll want to bite into them carefully. Opposite branching is a key feature for identification because it immediately rules out most woody plants. To remember which trees and shrubs have opposite branching, the mnemonic MADCAP comes in handy. MAD stands for maple, ash, dogwood. CAP is short for Caprifoliaceae, the honeysuckle family. Let's break it down. Maple is referring to all trees in the maple family, Sapindaceae, which also includes buckeyes and horse chestnuts. Learning to group plants by family can help you see the bigger picture and ultimately make identification easier. Ash represents woody plants in the Oleaceae family. In the upper Midwest, you should only encounter ash species in the wild. Ornamentals like lilac might appear in old farmland. Then for dogwood, this one is easy. Cornus, which is the dogwoods, is the only genus in Cornaceae that appears in the Americas. Now for cap, there's a bit of taxonomic history to note. The honeysuckle family once included viburnums and elderberries, but these plants have been reclassified into the closely related Adoxaceae family. However, for simplicity, you can still associate them with honeysuckle when using the mnemonic. So MADCAP gives you a manageable way to remember opposite branching woody plants. While it's not exhaustive, it covers the vast majority of species you're likely to encounter. I should mention a couple of exceptions that occur in the upper Midwest that don't fit the mnemonic. Several euonymus natives grow here, but the most well-known is the highly invasive burning bush, prized for its brilliant fall colors. People should consider growing native euonymus such as wahoo instead, or any ornamental maple that produces the same colors. Another genus that can have opposite branching is rhamnus. Rhamnus is unusual because it can have both opposite and alternate branching on the same plant. There are a few natives, but common buckthorn is among the most widespread invasives in North America. These exceptions highlight that while MADCAP is a great starting point, there could be other woody plants with opposite branching to keep in mind, depending on the region. Moving along, the next plant I encountered is another member of the Viburnum genus. Once again, its fleshy dark fruits persisting in winter combined with opposite branching quickly confirmed its identity as a viburnum. This particular species is Viburnum rafinesquianum. And unlike the Viburnum lentago we saw earlier, its fruits are not considered edible. Viburnum is a large genus, and not all species produce fruit that are safe to eat. Similar to lentago, this shrub has pointy buds and dark fruits. But in the case of rafinesquianum, both are much smaller. Its common name, downy arrowwood, comes from the fine hairs on its leaves and its long straight stems and branches, which were traditionally used to make arrows. Next, we encounter another madcap plant with opposite branching. Unfortunately, this one isn't a welcome sight. It's one of the invasive bush honeysuckles. These include about 5 species that are notorious for displacing native plants. Bush honeysuckles are robust shrubs that can reach up to 20 feet in height, with attractive red berries that, despite their appearance, are bitter and inedible. If you're unfamiliar with them, the simple way to distinguish bush honeysuckles from native species is to break open a stem and examine the pith. Native honeysuckles have a solid pith, while invasive species have a hollow pith. Speaking of invasive plants with red fruits that persist into winter, this next one is multiflora rose. This species can be identified by its red rose hips and recurved spines. A useful feature to recognize rose hips is the group of withered sepals on their bottoms. Compared to native roses, multiflora rose hips are smaller and more numerous on each plant. While multiflora rose is invasive and very problematic for native ecosystems, its rose hips are edible and packed with nutrients, including vitamin C. This next plant also has red fruits that resemble those of multiflora rose, but it took me a while to identify it. For one, the plant has alternate branching, so no shortcuts with the madcap mnemonic here. Additionally, the multiple stems with gray bark and pale lenticels are common features in many shrubs. What stood out, though, was the excellent condition of so many bright red berries still clinging to the plant in winter. That's when it clicked that it might be a type of holly, and sure enough, it is. The holly species that gets used in holiday decorations is native to Europe. This North American holly lacks the evergreen leaves, but its fruits are very similar. Each fruit contains 1 to 3 bony seeds that are inedible. These fruits persist all through winter and serve as an important emergency food source for many bird species. Shifting gears from plants that stand out due to their fruits, conifers also make an impression in winter, thanks to their ability to hold on to their green needles year-round. In this area, all 3 native pine species of Wisconsin are abundant. Jack pine has short needles in bundles of 2 and small cones. This cold hardy tree extends farther north into Canada than any other pine species. Red pine features long needles in bundles of 2, along with small oval-shaped cones. Known for its attractive appearance, it thrives on sandy soils and can live for up to 500 years. Lastly, eastern white pine has needles of average length, arranged in bundles of 5, and larger cones that are long and slender. This iconic tree is the tallest conifer in eastern North America. Next, let's talk about oaks, which are among the few deciduous trees that hold onto their leaves through winter, making them easy to spot. Oaks are a cornerstone of biodiversity. As a keystone species, they support a wider variety of life than any other tree genus in North America, providing habitats for fungi, insects, birds, and mammals alike. There are about 90 species of oaks in North America, and 6 naturally occur in Iowa County. While identifying down to species can be tricky, it's particularly challenging to differentiate the red oak group. One of the more elusive red oak species in this region is the northern pin oak, which I haven't come across often, but here it is, perched atop a sandstone ledge. Notice the mostly smooth bark and how it retains many of its lower branches. This can be mistaken for black oak, which can have a similar habit. Taking a look at the leaves, we see deep sinuses between the lobes. The narrow lobes with their bristly tips can resemble a flickering flame. But identifying oak species based on leaves alone is unreliable. They're highly variable, and both black and red oaks can produce leaves that look like this. The best way to distinguish oaks is by closely examining their acorns. The northern pin oak has medium-sized acorns, where the cap covers about 1/3 of the nut. The nut itself is shaped like a spinning top. For comparison, here I have northern red oak acorns in my left hand and northern pin oak acorns in my right hand. Notice how the northern red oak acorns are larger. Plus, its caps are shaped like a saucer, while the northern pin oak's cap is more of a bowl shape. Distinguishing the northern pin oak from black oak is even more challenging. Now I have black oak acorns in my left hand. We can see the northern pin oak acorn is just a bit more oblong, But the true difference lies in the cap. The black oak acorn has shaggy scales around the cap edges, whereas the northern pin oak has flattened scales throughout the cap. Identifying oak species can be tricky, but these trees play such an important role in our ecosystem that they deserve our close attention. And speaking of a tree that grabs my attention, well, this is an exciting find right here. This is a white ash tree, a young white ash tree. They're actually all around right here. And this is great because ash trees, as you might know, they've been decimated by the insect, the emerald ash borer. You don't see them in the forested landscapes anymore. Ornamental varieties you'll see existing in towns, but you won't see any mature trees out in the woods anymore. And this all happened within about the last 10 years. Very exciting to see. This means that their seed bank is viable in the soil and has been for a good 10 years. So it gives hope that maybe they'll make a comeback. I feel bad for anyone that's maybe new to being a naturalist or maybe too young to have seen these guys in the wild. The upland ash, which is the white ash, can get very tall and turn into very beautiful trees. I like to describe their silhouettes. The way they look is when a fireworks explodes and the trails of light fall down. That same sort of sinuous pattern is what the branching on ash trees is like, which contrasts with most trees, which are, kind of zigzaggy and chaotic. Gorgeous trees. Probably the first tree I fell in love with because, at least in this region, this is the tree that the morel mushroom used to associate with. Now, morels associate with different trees in different regions, but around here it was the white ash. Seeing these makes me think of a concept in environmental science known as shifting baseline syndrome. And that's where a person sees the environment within the scope of their lifetime. They might come to a high quality woodland such as this and assume that this is the pristine, perfect version of the woodland. And the flaw in that is it's not taking into any historical context. In these woodlands, for example, in recent history, we've lost the passenger pigeon, which was the most abundant bird species. We lost bison, the most abundant large ungulate herbivore in this region. And those two species undoubtedly impacted the environment greatly. Also, there's countless numbers of invasives that have been introduced that weren't here before. And, there's no fire regime anymore. So, for as wonderful as these woods are, it's not the version that's pristine. And the problem with this syndrome is the next generation might come to this high quality woodland. They're not going to see these adult ashes. And every generation that passes, the environment degrades a little bit. Another term for it is ecological amnesia. I've tried discovering what will be the fate of ash trees, searched the internet quite a bit. I haven't found a whole lot. I did find one talk on YouTube. I cannot find it anymore, but it was by an arborist who not only talked about the demise of the ash, but also the American chestnut. And his theory was these trees might recover. It's going to take a long time, but they might. But if you're a young person, or maybe you're just becoming a naturalist now and you did not get to experience this in the forest, so this has been taken away from you. So hopefully my little rant here inspires you to care more about habitat restoration. Interestingly enough, the same talk, the guy talked about the laurel wilt disease. This is a recent disease caused by a fungus affecting plants in the Lauraceae plant family, which in the upper Midwest, that the trees that are members of that are sassafras, spice bush, not really a tree, more of a shrub, but two beautiful species. And his outlook for that is not nearly as rosy. He felt like they are at serious risk of extinction. So if there's a sassafras woodland near you, maybe enjoy it while you can. Sorry, I don't wish to bum anybody out by watching my videos. The efforts underway to restore the American chestnut are truly inspiring and remind us that positive change is possible. But at the same time, we need to acknowledge the reality that human activity is now the primary force shaping the environment, leading to habitat loss and species extinction. Exploring the driftless area in winter has made me appreciate the beauty and complexity of nature, even during its quieter seasons.